Hello.
Hello, back again.
Again, how are you doing?
Right, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. A bit tired, but yeah.
We're both a bit tired. Mind you, I didn't get any sleep last night because Dave kept me awake,
Yeah.
which was not, I wasn't best pleased with him about that. But
Fair enough. Poor Dave.
poor Dave, as you all say.
So we are back for podcasting 2025.
And we've discovered that actually we're 3 years in.
We are, yeah. We're pretty much 3 years into our podcasting journey.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you consider that?
It is, yeah.
Did you ever think you were going to be doing it for 3 years?
No, I don't think so. No. And it's been good fun. It's been good fun.
I suppose you meet people that you never think you're going to meet, do you? And I think that's what's interesting. And you always get that nervous person that wants, oh, no, I don't think I can do that. And then they come in and go, oh my gosh, this was such a brilliant experience.
Yeah, they're always the people who leave and they're like quite keen to come back, which is really good. But no, I think the podcast has gone I think it's turned into something slightly different to what I thought. I think it's turned into more of a people sharing their journeys and their life experiences with the world, which, having seen a lot of the feedback, which sometimes you won't see because more of it's on Facebook than anywhere, a lot of the feedback is that people love hearing about people's journeys and all of that. And the one that we've recorded earlier today, I was saying to Kimberly that what's really good is we didn't talk about what she did before she started her business. Yeah. And I kind of presumed that it was going to be something in that industry, and it absolutely wasn't. Yeah. And I think people can watch that podcast and go, wow, I could start a business. I don't need 20 years experience of being a baker to open a bakery. You don't. And I think that's what's really nice is we kind of showcase people's life stories.
And their changes.
Yeah, and their transformations of their lives and things like that.
And it's not always the kind of most positive thing, is it? In a sense, because not everybody has an easy journey. I think journeys are quite...
No, and I think people sharing their challenges is also really valuable and important because people can learn from that and go, well, yeah, it happens. I keep saying this thing on Instagram at the minute, and I can't remember what the exact words are, but it's something like even Earth has thunderstorms, but the sun always comes back out, and it's a bit like people's own lives around. You're going to have bad moments, you're going to have darker times, but actually the sun will come out again.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the sun comes out, but it comes out in different ways. I think when you've had a significant life-changing experience, you don't always feel that sunshine is as bright as it was before.
Yeah.
I think
that's
for some
true.
people. But it doesn't mean to say that life is awful, because it isn't. And we have a bit of a slogan in the family now is the worst has happened. So nothing else as bad as that could happen. So I think holding on to that kind of almost makes some of the difficult days quite easy.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And I think I used to be really superstitious about putting your shoes on the table if you bought a new pair of shoes and really random things like that. And I'm not anymore. I just think, it can't get any worse than what happened. So you kind of detach yourself from that stuff.
And it'll be what it'll be type thing. Yeah. No, that's fair.
But I think one of the things the other thing is something about recognition. And I think that's quite important because I know you very rarely get recognition in your field because it just doesn't happen, does it? Who puts you up for recognition?
Yeah, that's true.
When was does anybody actually know that you house God knows how many people in really nice functioning houses?
I think the answer to that is no. And although we work really closely with the local authorities, I think they don't necessarily understand the mechanics of that. And it's really interesting. I went to an event recently where they talked about the state of the private rental sector, and it was all doom and gloom and negativity and talking about how they're going to license more people and things like that. And what they don't look at is the positives that are out there and encouraging the positives. And I think the world does that a lot. It's a bit like the news. The news is always about negative stories. It's very rarely about positive stories because that's what sells papers. That's what gets people talking. That's the clickbait. And I think we do need more positivity because positivity breeds positivity as well. So if you showcase that someone's done something amazing, that will encourage others. You've just been awarded a a very prestigious award. Want to tell everybody about that? So go on.
I haven't really talked about
No,
it.
that's why
And I
you're
feel really private
now on
about
the
it.
pedestal about
Yeah.
it.
I do feel really private about it. And I think part of it was because I was so shocked. And then there was a part of me that is proud, of course, to be on your New Year's honours list is a big moment for anybody. And I was touched by the fact, and I'm still reading the folder of what people have said about me. And every time I read something, I cry, which is, oh, it's going to make me cry now.
But that recognition is so valuable and important.
Well, yeah, but you can't. It's like a life's work, isn't it?
It is,
it's 30 odd years of helping people, I suppose.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I never expect recognition for anything that I do. I kind of just do it because I love doing it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people out there do that. But I think the recognition that you've got, it's well deserved. But also, I think as a result, it helps people look at others. Awards in general. I think people look at them and go, "I want to go and do more for my community. I want to support more people." And I think it does encourage people. And like I said, it's a positive thing that breeds more positivity.
I hear you, and I do feel some people could give more.
Yeah.
And I'd really appreciate help sometimes, because sometimes I feel like I carry a lot of responsibility that I shouldn't carry on my own, but I do, and I know I do, and I support other people in how they're supposed to be supporting other things. And I was talking to you this morning about just sitting down and doing the HMRC stuff for the charities, and it's a very simple task that actually, because somebody else didn't do it, it's now left on my shoulders to do it. And I find that quite a lot. I always end up picking up the pieces, and I suppose that's life experience. I can do that. I don't always want to do it though. I kind of feel, help me, please, but it's about giving back. And before we press the record button, talking about other organisations, and because we're such a small charity, there's only a few of us that actually do stuff. There is that bit where that recognition of, we do an awful lot on 4 trustees.
We do. And you look at some of the bigger charities, locally and nationally and even internationally, that it's very easy for them to raise money. It's very easy for them to put an advert on TV and attract money, but also to kind of spread awareness. And I think for us, it's like starting a business. It's very hard to not get customers, but to get donors that donate money. The demand for the service is there because all of these big organizations refer to us. The NHS, doctors, nurses, they refer to us. The mental health services refer to us. So that's the easy part. It's actually keeping up and ensuring that we are getting donations from kind-hearted people, organizations, and so on to be able to keep going. Yeah, I personally find it quite frustrating when you see people do sponsored runs, sponsored walks, or they jump out of a plane for some of these larger, more well-known charities that perhaps don't do as much in our community. And that can be a bit sad at times, and especially if it's people that who know that you are involved in a charity locally, but actually they decide to go and do something for a different charity. It's a bit like, well, it's a bit frustrating. It is what it is, but yeah.
But there's another side to that as well, though, isn't there? Because actually, like you said, all these people refer to us.
Yeah.
We have referrals from all of the mental health charities, send them to us because they don't do what we do.
No.
What we do is quite unusual compared to a lot of others. A lot of these charities will suggest that other people go to these places, or the GP will suggest that they come to us. Or do you know what I'm saying? It's not, they re-refer on. They don't actually do the work.
No.
But what they don't do is share the pot of money that they have. And that's the bit that I find frustrating. But also, I know a lot of people locally that have used the charity, but we'll go and raise money for some other random charity because it's fashionable, not because it's... And so I completely understand where you're coming from. I feel... And then I think, oh, well, and then I have to just let go of it and just kind of put my head down. And
I think I'm the same. I see it in my business life as well. I'm a property developer. I develop properties and rent them out. And, one of the big organizations in our industry is Shelter. It's a charity that supposedly fights for people's rights when their landlords or their local authority have let them down. And they spend a lot of money a lot of time campaigning for more regulations and things like that. And they get donated lots of money. They get given lots of money. But actually, how many people do they house? Do you want to take a guess?
Go on.
They house not one single person. They don't house anybody because they're not a housing charity. They claim to be, but they're not. Even in their name, shelter. How many people do they shelter? Not a single person. What they do is they campaign. It's very different to people that are on the ground, the organisations out there that provide homelessness accommodation, that work with the local authorities to find people homes. It's very different. It's a very different type of organisation.
It's funny you say that, though, because that's what happened with the RSPCA a few years ago, wasn't it? When they were putting all their money into people and campaigning about hunting, and they weren't putting the money to actually save dogs, horses that were being badly treated. And it was like, and actually that's why one person I think left, because they were caught out by doing that and said, no, you can't be doing that. But interestingly enough, they've now nominated somebody as one of their who is a chief campaigner throughout the whole of the UK against activities. And it's like, come on, wake up. People don't donate money to the RSPCA to actually stop them from doing activities. They want them to help animals.
Exactly.
They're not helping animals by doing that. It's one box or one. It can't be a campaign.
No.
And it's exactly the same as shelter. It shouldn't be a campaign.
No.
It should be, actually, we're going to house these people,
or
we're going to, all this money that we get.
I completely agree, and it's really frustrating. It's a bit like, you get people that knock on the door from the likes of Cancer Research UK and other organisations that are similar, and they are paid fundraisers. They are paid to walk the streets and collect money from people and collect subscriptions. And they're quite often. I went to a few events last year, exhibitions, and it's amazing the number of charity stalls and stands there are now at sort of at expos. And those individuals are paid to be there to collect monthly donations from people. And I had a guy come up to me at one of these exhibitions and he said, "Oh, can you donate £5 a month to Cancer Research?" I said, "I can, but how much are you being paid, and how much of that £5 I donate are you taking? Because you're stood here being paid probably a fairly good hourly rate. Maybe it's a commission. I don't know." And he very quickly said, "Oh, well, thanks for your time," and walked off, because he realised that I'd sort of caught him out a little bit. You can't stand there, saying that, this charity desperately needs money when you're stood there being paid. If you believe in that,
do it for nothing.
Do it for nothing.
But do you feel, because obviously Cancer Research have done some amazing jobs. And in fact, I worked with somebody who was a top professor in the children's section of cancer. And he did amazing scientist. And obviously he had to get paid to be able to do that work. And I agree with that. Is that about the community pulling together and going, okay, we're all going to, this year, the village's charity is going to be Cancer Research because we all feel that it's necessary to do that. And we're all going to do it for nothing, because that's the problem, isn't it? They need people to actually get people out there to get money in. But
yeah, I do hear you. If you don't pay fundraisers, are you going to fundraise type thing? Maybe, but I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I remember reading this sort of very philosophical book in COVID that was around, why is there a need for charities? Why do we need charities? We shouldn't need charities. The state should pay, or the state doesn't pay, and actually these things don't get looked after. And it's funny, isn't it, the different viewpoints that you look at? Yeah, I mean, there's so many charities out there that do fantastic work that don't get the recognition, don't get the fundraising, that rely on volunteers to do a lot.
But also, I think it's how you fill out a form. It's whether you're good at filling out the forms for grants. It's whether your face fits in a certain situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had this conversation last night, didn't we? When we were talking about the being invited to things, because I've now got some letters after my name or whatever. Yeah. And you were saying you felt quite shocked about that. And I thought, well, sadly, it is what it is.
Well, it's, I've done all kinds of different volunteering. I started off doing volunteering for Citizens Advice Bureaus, then did some stuff with the Scout Association. And I've done all sorts of different things. And it's amazing how every organisation is the same. And organisations that are, I think I describe it top heavy. They have lots of people that are paid to be in those roles that then they sort of almost fail to listen to the volunteers that are the lifeblood of those organisations, and they just kind of, they don't listen, and they make decisions that are not always the right decisions and for the positivity. But there are so many people that go and volunteer for things that are more about it being a fantastic organisation and on the face of it than actually that organisation really needs your help. And I think anyone that's listening that wants to do something voluntary should look at organisations that are in their community, actively in their community, that are making a real difference, that perhaps do need that cake to be baked or do need that help fundraising or doing a sponsored walk or whatever, because I think you'll make a much bigger difference than people that donate £5 a month to some of these nationwide charities.
I think there's a place for the £5 a month for the national charities. I think there is a place, because some people don't want and don't have the time to give.
No, that's true.
But I also feel, where do you hear about when people want help? Because you don't. I get the local paper every week. I've had the local paper. I've lived here for 25 years, and every week I've had the local paper delivered. Okay, for 25 years. And you go in there, and it doesn't. Very rarely does it say, we need volunteers, because partly you can't get your things printed in the local paper. They don't. They only print what they want to print. So therefore it's difficult to have any of that stuff in the paper. So you know that people in the Sedgemoor area, we're desperately looking for volunteers. We're desperately looking for another trustee, or we need a fundraiser or whatever. So you just don't know. And it's literally people like you and I are badgering other people to do the job. So where do you find out?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's about talking to the community about what's needed, and trying to spread that message as widely and as clear as possible. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And again, when you're run by volunteers like our charity is, it's quite hard to get that message out, because we've all got other responsibilities, jobs and things. So we haven't got the time to constantly be ringing the paper or constantly speaking to various people about it. It's hard for sure.
And I know the thing that, like the award that I got, like Burnham-on-Sea paper, I was all over the front page. Apparently, I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
That's where I heard about it from. I didn't even know.
I know.
And then someone messaged me and said, "Great news about Angie." And I was like, I don't really know what this is about. I just Googled your name, burnhamonsea.com came to the top, and I was like, oh my God.
Like that alone. Whereas my local community, I live in Wedmore. I live in a small hamlet. I live here, and yet nothing. The Cheddar Valley Gazette, or whatever it's called now, Cheddar Press or whatever it's called, it's got this tiny little thing that's about that much to say, and it's got one for each person in
the area.
Not just no. It's not the look. That's the whole of the paper covers.
I see.
Come on. Give some credit to people. It's not like we've just turned up on the doorstep. We've been part of this community as a charity for 14 years or more.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
And yet they'll have this big thing about planning and building that's in some place where there's nowhere near this area. And you just think it's such a shame, really, that you don't actually give the recognition to people.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like you with the housing, isn't it? Because you house a lot of people. Was it from Ukraine?
Yeah.
And it's like, does anybody know that?
Probably not. I mean, the local authority do, because we talk to them weekly about it, about what we've got available, and they tell us about what they've got coming, and things like that. Yeah, probably not. And I think arguably you're going to get some people that are positive about that story and some people that are very negative about that story. So I'm not particularly fussed, actually, to be honest. I know that I feel like we're doing good. We're looking after people, but yeah.
But you also house a lot of people that wouldn't be housed in other.
Yeah, well, fundamentally, we're talking about refugees that are, well, two trains of thought, really. Some people that supported our armed forces in Afghanistan that were promised accommodation pretty much in any ally country. Some of them decided to come to the UK and are very much supported by those ally countries to come here. And then, we've also supported people that are fleeing the Ukrainian war that have either come to this country, come to the UK as a result of the Ukrainian refugee scheme, whereby they were being housed in people's homes, which was a scheme that was set up to last 6 months. You could support someone or a family coming from Ukraine to live in your home for 6 months. But of course, we are now talking 3 years on, and a lot of that accommodation is now either not available or they've outgrown it. There's people that fled their homes to come here, and perhaps they were pregnant at the time, or they had, 2-3-year-olds. Well, they're now 6. They need their own bedroom and things like that. So, yeah, we've done a lot of work, or as much work as we can, really, to support some of those families and some of those individuals as much as possible. And if we could, would we do more? I think the answer to that would be yes. But we also house a lot of local people. We house an awful lot of people from the local hospitals that struggle to find accommodation, because quite often they come for a 12-month placement, and it's very hard to find accommodation for that kind of length of time. Some people want longer, some people want less. But yeah, we do the best that we can, really.
And I mean, similarly to myself and Dave, we do the same. We house a lot of local people. We don't do any of the resettlement work that you do, but we do an awful lot of resettlement work for people who've had mental illness and need some support, and continue to support them when they're in the community. And I think, like you were saying right at the very beginning of this conversation about the pressures of private landlords and stuff like that. And it's like, and a lot of it now is because you just don't get any tax breaks doing it. It costs a lot of money to do it. And there's no support for the local landlord. They don't pay the rent. You can't afford to pay the damn mortgage, and you're in those situations. And that's half the battle that you've got.
It is. And sadly, I think, the government, I could get very political here, but the government, they haven't quite got it right. I don't think any government has recently, in recent years, has really got it right for landlords. In that, it's now very unattractive to be a small landlord. If you've got a couple of houses or even one house, to be a small landlord, it's nigh on impossible to make a profit. You're going to cover your costs, but that's it. And because of all the costs, the taxation, and everything, you've got to be a bigger landlord, and I'm not sure what that number looks like. But you've got to be a sizable number to make it work. But the government are constantly changing things. They're making it much more difficult. And I think the sad thing here is that what that really does is impact rent. It puts the cost of rent up, and rent has gone up astronomically over the last 10 years. It's gone up so much, and I think people don't realise how much it's gone up by. I'm quite fortunate; quite a few of my friends are landlords, and we talk on a regular basis about rent and what rent people are getting, what people are charging, what rents you're seeing come onto the market. And quite often you'll find that you'll agree a rent this month for something, and you think, oh, that's a bit pricey, but in a year's time that is almost cheap. And then to put the rent up to what is now market rent, what everyone else is charging, it's quite a big step. And I think as a result, people are a little bit out of touch with what things cost, what rents are now. And I really wish the local authorities and the government would kind of listen more to landlords, listen to the private rental sector, because it's very, very hard. It's a hard industry to be in. Ultimately, social housing and housing associations, who are, on the whole, large organisations with large swathes of property, they quite often don't get as much flack as the private rental sector does. However, you go and watch some of these TV programs, Slum Landlords, Nightmare Tenants. Quite often it's the housing association properties that are the ones that are in the worst condition, poor condition. The tenants aren't being treated very well. They're not having issues listened to. Whereas the private rental sector, I think from my personal experience, is a bit different, because the landlord owns the property. It's their asset. When there's a leak, when there's a problem, when a tenant wants to do something to that property, the landlord has more interest in dealing with it and taking action, because it's their asset. So I think housing association is a bit different.
I think an ethical landlord you'd get that with.
For sure.
And somebody that cared about their property. But I think there are people out there that don't treat people well. But also alongside of that, you've got a cohort of landlords that do their best, but very often get treated quite poorly by the community because they automatically assume that you're a bad landlord because that's what the press is told. Yeah,
you're the reason that, you know, someone's son or someone's daughter can't buy a house because you've bought all the houses. And I've had that. I had a woman come up to me once, stood outside a property that had a sold sign, and I think she lived in the road. I can't quite remember. It's a while ago now. And she said, "Oh, have you bought it? When are you moving in? Have you got a family? Blah blah blah." And I said, "No, actually, we're gonna develop the property. We're gonna refurbish it all, and we're gonna rent it out." And she just kicked off basically that her son couldn't afford to buy a property locally because all the properties are being sold to landlords and property developers. What's hilarious is that the property had a prohibition order on it. No one could live in this property because it had been fire damaged, and it had been empty for 3 years. So
you could have bought it, but actually you couldn't buy it because you didn't have the capacity to be able to do anything with it.
Live in it, they wouldn't have been able. It wasn't mortgageable. All of these things. And I'm quite proud to say that all of the properties we've bought have always been uninhabitable. They've either not got working electrics, or they've not got running water, or they've been fire damaged, or storm damaged, or just overgrown, or they've been abandoned, neglected. That's it. I've bought properties with that are effectively a hoarder's paradise, and you've got a roof that's collapsing, and rooms that are full of people's belongings, but the roof's collapsed. So actually, they can't even get into those rooms. Yeah, I think sadly, I feel like we do a good job because we turn those abandoned and empty properties into nice, wonderful, comfortable accommodation. Yeah, not everybody sees it like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's quite sad, really, isn't it?
It is.
It is sad. But I also think education, I think when you're a smaller landlord, you can educate your tenants as to how to manage a property, which prevents the kind of problems that you have. I mean, black mold. Every single house in the whole country suffers from that. It doesn't, and a lot of it is just condensation. There's a cold spot in your room, you're going to get it. If you don't ventilate your room or you don't put a dehumidifier on, we've had tranches of rain, you're going to need a dehumidifier, particularly in an old property. Smaller landlords will educate their tenants to realise that actually you need to open the windows in the morning, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then people realise that you can't hang your washing inside the house to dry it, because in actual fact, that moisture goes somewhere, and it generally goes to the coldest part of the room.
Exactly, that's it. Black mold is generally condensation, which is caused by drying of clothes,
moisture in the air.
It's moisture in the air, and if you're right, if you don't ventilate, you're not going to let that warm moisture out. And when it's cold outside and you've got a lot of moisture inside, as soon as that sits on it or hits a cold spot on the wall, you are going to get black mold. And you're absolutely right. Every house will suffer from that if you don't ventilate it properly.
Absolutely.
And whenever we're renovating properties, we try to combat that by putting in things like trickle vents in the windows and ensuring there is ventilation and things, heating the property correctly. But unfortunately, you can't always get tenants to fully understand what it is they need to do. Sometimes when this has happened, we offer them we go and buy them a dehumidifier and say, right, plug that in. When you're drying your clothes on a drying rack in the kitchen next to the washing machine and the dishwasher and everything else that's going on, and you're cooking 30 days of food in one go, you're going to have to run the dehumidifier because you're creating so much water in the air and you're refusing to open a window because it's cold outside. I get it. I absolutely get it. But this is the way to combat it. And it's an education piece. It's that collaborative working. And it kind of comes back to, I like to have a relationship with my tenants that if they've got a problem, I'd rather know about it. Because what I don't want is in 6 months or a year or 5 years' time, they move out. I've then got a massive issue because they didn't talk to me about it, or we haven't inspected it properly, or whatever. So it's important to have that.
It's also being realistic as well, because somebody made a complaint once about one of the properties and to the council, and it was like completely out of the blue. Nobody had reported there was a problem. How can Dave go and maintain it if he doesn't know about it? It's a robin, Mike.
I was going to say,
I have a robin that wants to come in the house. I open the window to let him come in, and then he doesn't come in. But he's there. He does it all the time. He's constantly tapping on the window. And you're like, wow. We didn't know there was a problem. We didn't know that something needed repairing or anything else like that. And as soon as we got that, as soon as there's a problem, we deal with it to the best of our ability. And it's like, it's just really random that why would you go to the council when you haven't even gone to the landlord and told them that there's a problem? Because you don't know unless somebody tells you.
That's it. But it might be because they had a bad experience before.
Previously.
Right. Didn't do anything. And I would get that.
Yeah, but it's a tough one. It is a real tough one. So what's your plans for the 2025? Because obviously this is our beginning of our year.
It is, yeah. What are my plans? That's a very good question. So I'm renovating my own house at the moment, which is exciting. There's bits and pieces to do there. We've got a couple of projects on the horizon, which are renovating. Again, one's an empty property, one's I don't know what you would call it really. It should be abandoned. It's not, but another property that needs a lot of work. It's got a roof collapsing. It's got lots of damp issues.
Have you completed on that one yet?
No, not yet. We hopefully will in the next few weeks. But that's going to be a nice challenge. We've got bits of maintenance to do that we do every year, some redecoration and things like that. So yeah, we'll sort of see what happens. How about you?
I don't know. I think I want to do different things. I want to do some different things. I want to be a bit more sociable because I'm really rubbish. I have a very small social circle. I have a big social circle, but just personally on my own, my social circle is, well, I see a couple of people and that's about it. And I think I just need to give myself I've never, ever had time to myself. I've always worked. And if I'm not working, I'm doing stuff for the charity. And if I'm not doing stuff for the charity, I'm doing stuff for the kids or somebody. I'm always doing something for somebody else. And very rarely do I go, I'm going to go and have a cup of coffee, or I'm going to go and have lunch with a friend, or go to London for the day and shop. Not that I'm a shopper, but just go and do some sightseeing or do something like that. I kind of feel that's kind of in my head what I'd like to do. Obviously, we're moving, so that's another big thing. So it's getting this house ready for somebody to move in.
I'm excited to see our new podcast location. It's going to be interesting.
Where are we going to be? And then, so there's that. And then, so I've got to get this house ready and then prepare the other house. Yeah. So that's a lot of brain space at the moment. And I'm hoping we'll be in there by March.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting. And then I want to do some traveling, but I don't know what I want to do, as in we're going to France this year because for weddings. We're inundated with weddings this year, which is really exciting. But it's like, wow, we had 4 weddings in the space of 3 weeks. Was it 2 weeks? 2 weeks, I think it was. And
it's crazy.
Like, we cannot physically do that. We physically can't. So we had to say no to one and yes to 3 others, providing that EasyJet, whoever we're flying with, gets us back into the UK for the one on the 7th. So that takes up most of our early holiday time. And then we're going to go away, but I don't know what we're going to do. And then just spend some time together, because Dave and I spend so little time together because we're so busy. And we just kind of said, right, we need to just regroup and kind of be a couple. But yeah, so that's my plan.
Sounds good.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But, coming back to like having an award and stuff like that, it's like so many people have rang me and said, oh, can you come talk to us? Can you come do this? Can you be invited?
It's lovely.
It's lovely. But some of it just feels a bit weird.
Yeah, I get that. I do get that.
I mean, I've always gone and spoken to organisations and we always have as a charity, haven't we? And we will go and talk to anybody about anything. And I'm more than happy to do that because I always think education helps other people get well. Are you coming to the thing at Hinckley? You've not read the email.
I don't think I have, no. We'll talk about that after. Should we end it there?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.